You don't grow a charity without, working really, really hard to make it happen.
Yeah.
Loads of events, going to meet people,
Yeah.
And constantly trying to keep a positive attitude. Positivity in a negative situation isn't naive, it's leadership.
Okay.
And as business people, you've got to lead family, you've got to lead staff, you've got to lead yourself through circumstances.
Hello and welcome to So This Works, the podcast about work-life balance. My name is Marcus Lee, and as well as hosting this podcast, I also run Real Street Productions, a video production company based in West Yorkshire. Work-life balance is really important, so on this episode I talked to Tim Nelson, the International Development Director at Hope for Justice, a global charity fighting human trafficking and modern slavery. We talk about his role at the charity, juggling family time with a demanding role, the challenges and life lessons learned from running his own business, as well as finding the time to breathe out and various other topics. I'm biased, but I think this is a really good listen. So just before we get into the conversation, don't forget to nod your head to the beat. Here we go. Tim, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, as always, I always introduce people at the start of the broadcast just to say a little bit about you, but you can introduce yourself better than I can. So why don't you tell the people listening a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Tim Nelson. I was originally born and brought up in Northern Ireland, moved over to university in England, and I'm married. I have 4 children, and I work as basically my role is I'm International Development Director for an anti-human trafficking charity. I didn't come there directly from university. I went to work for a bank, and I was a manager, then a senior manager for a bank, and following that I worked for a church, Life Church, for 11 years prior to the role that I'm doing now. Could you tell us a little bit more about the charity that you work for now? Yeah, certainly. So the charity is called Hope for Justice. In 2007, a friend of mine asked me to sit on the board of an offshore investment trust. And I've got a degree in technology management. So a friend asked me to go over to America and look at tech businesses. I found myself in Los Angeles with a night spare. Nice. And a friend who was over there who worked for a children's charity invited me out for dinner. And I met a chap who told me he worked as a slave hunter. So I asked him loads of questions, and while we were out for dinner, he was on the phone to Condoleezza Rice, and he was arguing about the downgrading of India on the human trafficking register. Yeah. And he'd been over in India the week before and seen girls in cages. Wow. And he pulls out his phone and shows me images that he's taken covertly the week before. And his challenge to me is, this is going on all over the world. What are you going to do about it? It's going on all over the world. It's going on in the UK. It might even be going on in your city that you're in. What are you going to go on and do about it? So I came back to the UK, spoke to pretty much everybody I knew who could help me. And one of my friends introduced me to a chap called Ben Cooley. And Ben was a trained opera singer and wanted to put on an event. And there were 9 of us that got behind Ben's vision to work together to put an event on. We hired the NEC. Yeah. 11 months later, we got 5,884 people to come. Wow. And that was the launch of Hope for Justice. And the charity itself, we initially thought we might be a conduit to send money on to other charities internationally. But actually, we discovered that there wasn't really much happening in the UK. Yeah. There'd been an operation called Pentameter 1 where 88 girls had been rescued over an 18-month period by the entire police force across England and Wales. Yeah. So we decided that we would start in the UK, and we'd start by taking on former police officers to do undercover intelligence for us to find victims of modern slavery. And we were getting so much information. Yeah. And we went on to set up an investigative hub in West Yorkshire. And in our first year of an investigative hub, which really has 8 staff, investigators, social workers, trainers, people who would be able to be deployed in communities to find individual victims, we rescued 110 victims in West Yorkshire. Wow. The youngest being 3 months old, trafficked for sexual exploitation. The oldest being 58 years old, trafficked for labour trafficking. And within that, we uncovered a bed manufacturer who were making beds for 2 of the largest retailers in the UK. And we rescued 33 people from that bed manufacturer. It was the first case of slavery in the supply chain of a major multinational from this country that was given high-profile status. The Sunday Times did a report on it. We went on to set up in the West Midlands the following year. We rescued 104 people. We saw rescue rates go up by 127%. To where we are now in the UK, we're working with at least 56% of the police authority. We helped to chair the National Forum for Police Crime Commissioners on this issue. We've got 5 locations in the UK, and then we've expanded internationally. So now we're operating in 9 countries.
Yeah.
And we have a 4-part strategy where we look to prevent, we look to rescue, we look to restore, and we look to see reformation.
That's amazing. I mean, I may have missed the starting period for when Hope for Justice started, but what sort of time period are we talking about from the day that it started to present day?
So we're 10 years old now, coming up to our 11th year in November.
Yeah.
And we're closing in on 500 staff. Last year, we helped 71,000 children. We rescued just over 2,000 individuals. We had 1,014 children that we brought back to their mums and dads after they'd been taken and put into exploitation. And from our end, we're not stopping. We're kind of advancing at a pace internationally. And with my role, it's kind of key within that to see that growth go at an exponential level.
I mean, when most of us think about the term slavery, we think about slavery 200, 300 years ago. So to think those things are still happening today, it blows my mind, and I think it blows most people's mind to think, right, people are being treated as slaves. Mm-hmm. I don't want to jeopardize any cases or ongoing investigations that you might have now. I'm based in Bradford. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to talk about slavery in Bradford? I mean, we walk the streets, we live in nice homes, most of us, we go about our business day to day, but am I right in thinking then, based on that there's cases of slavery ongoing behind closed doors that we would miss just walking the streets day to day? Yeah,
I mean, we've got a team that are deployed in West Yorkshire that I talked about, and fundamentally we're finding cases every week in West Yorkshire. Some of those would cover into the Bradford area. They cover across 3 core areas: domestic servitude, labour trafficking, and then sexual exploitation. Yeah. And Bradford's no different than any of the other cities that we're coming in contact with in the UK. Anywhere where we're seeing forced exploitation, the numbers when we started, I said there were 88 victims that were found in pentameter 1 over an 18-month period. The last figures for the last year, that there were 6,933 individuals who across the UK were entered into the national referral mechanism. Yeah. And another 1,000 cases where those individuals didn't want to go through that process for fear of deportation or other issues that they would maybe not be so pleased to present themselves to the police. So we're seeing that Bradford is no different across the UK, and the UK has really taken a robust defence on this. They've come a long way. There's still more to go for businesses, for police forces to take this issue seriously. Yeah. But it's a model for the rest of the world, and we're starting to work with many of the countries internationally, and some of the people that we're finding are. It's horrendous. Yeah. Just in the UK, horrendous people. We had a chap who was held for 24 years as a domestic slave in London by a consultant and nurse on the NHS. 24 years, and scared of going to the police, not allowed to leave home, and saw us on TV and thought, well, I don't know if I could trust the police, but maybe I could trust Hope for Justice. Yeah. So we're seeing those cases come, and those cases are being replicated all over the world now. Mm.
So what happens to... did you mention, was it a consultant who worked for the NHS?
Yes, they both got prosecuted under the, in 2015, there was a modern slavery bill that took royal assent. So they got prosecuted under that legislation and now serving a prison sentence for it. Okay. And then through that process, the individual victim, now survivor, is receiving the care that he needs in that process and helping him with his future.
Fantastic. Just going back to West Yorkshire, you mentioned about the statistics in West Yorkshire. Are there any places in the UK where modern day slavery is a bit more prominent?
Well, you're going to find it in all the major cities.
Yeah.
So I can't say one place rather than another because it all depends on what kind of defence the local police force have taken to this issue, what the indicators are. We've been working with a major multinational to be able to geomap the indicators for modern slavery across the UK. So there are places where it is likely to be more prevalent based on those indicators. But the myth that most people have got is that it's only immigrants that are being enslaved.
Yeah.
The number one place where people were trafficked from in the UK is the UK.
Right.
And when we were looking for that first event that we were going to do, which we called the Stand at the NEC, we were looking for a mother to tell her story of being rescued. And the lady we found was 9 miles from here.
Okay.
And she was white, she was middle class, and her daughter had been tricked into being trafficked.
Right.
And I think you don't necessarily think it could be a white lady, middle class, because then that starts to conjure up images that it could be my daughter, or it could be my niece, or it could be my cousin. And it's that we've started to tap into, because when people start to do that if it was my daughter, I'd do every single thing I could to get that daughter back.
Yeah.
The reality, it is someone's daughter, and we all need to do something. And when we take that responsibility, then we start to see society shift.
I think it's amazing work. It's heartbreaking work. It's heartbreaking to hear about some of those statistics, and I want to come back and talk about it a bit more. I do want to touch on one thing. You said the charity is 10 years old?
Yeah, it's coming up to 11.
It's coming up to 11 years old, but essentially that started with one person's idea, didn't it, to put on an event. And it's Ben Cooley, isn't it? Who launched that? Has he shared what that was like to launch something, to launch an event at the NEC in Birmingham, not being certain how many people are going to come, what that was like for him at the time?
Well, it was quite interesting because in the first meeting we got together, it was just about the concept of trying to put on an event. How do we do that? And I'd got event experience with working in the church, and I thought we could pull some people in to help. But second meeting in, he goes, I've booked the NEC. And Ben wouldn't mind me saying this, like at that stage, Ben was quite naive. So I'd said, well, how much is that going to cost? And he'd given a figure. And I asked, is that with VAT or without VAT? And with no word of a lie, Ben did not know what VAT was.
Right.
And when I turned around and said, well, we calculated the figures, and I think it was going to be £257,000 that we had to raise in an 11-month period, and said, Ben, we could lose our houses on this. And Ben's like, well, I don't own a house. Okay, Ben. You might not lose eyes, but there are other people in this room who could. Yeah. And I think it motivates you. And I think if your house is on the line, you do things in a different way. Yeah. And I think that was kind of the reality for all of us, that we didn't really know where we were going on this, but we knew we wanted to put an event together. Yeah. We did what no one would do. We pulled together all the different parties in this because we said we need a unified approach. And I think it surprised us where we ended up numerically. There were moments along the journey where it was like we were not hitting the numbers, and what will that look like in a room that can seat at best kind of 10,000 people-ish. Yeah. If we end up with 1,000 people, we're going to look fairly foolish. Yeah. But we've got amazing stories off the back of it. We had God TV came along and said that they wanted to film it. Yeah. And we were like, yeah, cool. You'll provide cameras. You'll do filming. Amazing. No problem. And we'll put it out live. Okay. So it's like, well, that's more pressure. Yeah. So we had a phone call that came to Ben in the office, and the office was probably as big as this table at that stage. We had another charity that given us what is now a broom cupboard in their offices. Yeah. And they'd given us this space, and we got a phone call through, and he answered the phone and said on the Monday morning, "Hello, Ben Cooley." And the lady was ringing up from America that she'd seen this on cable TV, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, have I got your direct line?" Kind of, it's the only line.
It's the line.
The line that we've got. And I think that just showed us that most organizations that would take on something like that would have a fleet of hundreds of volunteers, would have, tens of staff, that they would have an army behind it all. Whereas we had one person, Ben was part-time at that time, trying to, on a part-time salary, trying to be able to feed a family of four. Yeah. I know the story and I know the journey and I've walked it with him, but Ben was quite often missing lunches to make that happen.
Yeah.
And not everyone knows those painful moments. And there've been those moments as we've gone along to try and get this right. So I had the privilege of sitting on the founding board up until I came on staff, and at every level, it's required a level of commitment that most people wouldn't give.
Yeah. Well, people know the stories now because you've shared them. But it's good to hear those stories, especially when you can see how far, an organisation or a charity has come. I want to touch on travel, if that's all right, because I know that your job takes you to lots of different parts of the world. And I don't want you to say this, this isn't about showing off, but could you tell us about some of the places that you've had the privilege of visiting?
I've been to a lot of places. I think the most dominant place I've been to is the US. So part of my role is to try and look, how can we fund this? We might have a dream that we want to do something significant where we'll launch in a new country, but unless you've got the people who've got the money to make that happen, it's just a dream. And I think for me, what I'm trying to do is connect with people who can make that happen and then show those people what we're trying to achieve. So, I think I calculated the last trip I had that I'd been to 32 states in America in the last 3 years.
Wow.
We had a couple of pilots that we knew that gave us privileges for Ben and myself to fly standby. So it means the charity doesn't have to find that money. I have been in Uganda, Cambodia, Singapore, all in the last 6 months. We've just launched into Australia. We're launching into Hong Kong. I was out in Hong Kong last year. I'm going at the weekend to Ethiopia and then on to Tanzania. I think I've seen a lot, but quite quickly. If you do a lot of travel, anyone who's done a lot of travel, the first couple of months, it's like this amazing, I get to do this and I get to be here and I get to represent the charity, but there's a desire in you to keep going. And these are places that I've only heard of: Los Angeles, New York, Washington. Yeah. The reality is, after a little while of extensive travel, you just crave your bed at home. Yeah. I think I did 22 weeks away from home last year. Wow. Which is a lot. And when I've got 4 kids who all want to see me, and even maintaining relationships with friends is hard. Yeah. Because when you get home, you're so exhausted and you've got work to do here to prepare for the next trip and the next visits and the next connections. So, keeping a marriage, keeping kids on track, my wife is an absolute saint. And certainly from my end, going to places as long as there's a purpose. Yeah. And when I'm away, I'll probably be up at 6 a.m. and work till 10, 11 at night, because I'll try and cram the days into meetings, the meetings into those days as full as I possibly can, so I can be home as quickly as I can. Yeah. I mean, you've touched on the next thing that I was going to ask you, which was about you travel, you get to, you visit lots of these places around the world, but you've got a wife and 4 children at home. Yep. Again, I don't want to ask you anything that's difficult or awkward, but does that create any challenges? Does it create any difficulty in the home? Yeah. What's that like? Well, I think I've got a principle where if I can get home, I'll get home. Yeah. So I was speaking at an event last week in Brighton and it finished at 9. Now, I know most people will have just gone, you can take a hotel locally. Yeah. Get yourself, head down, you'll be back the next day. Yeah. For me, no, I want to take the kids to school. Yeah. And I need to be back. So I'm home for 3:30 and the kids are up at 6. Yeah. And the reality is you rock with it because I've got a busy day for the following day. I think that principle is important. I think when I first got married, I kind of had this old fashioned view, I'll do this. Yeah. You take care of the home. Yeah. The reality is so different to that. Yeah. You take on so many titles at home in terms of I'm director of recycling. Always the director. Always director. You can never give anyone a lowly position. But I think I've had to change, and it's been part of my journey to kind of to wise up into what life is actually like for us doing this together. Yeah. And my wife has it hard. Yeah. Because I'm away. Yeah. And that means that she has to deal with the emotions of the children, which is the hardest thing to try and manage. Yeah. You can practically facilitate things happening. But if they're missing me, there is always a moment before I go where there's a wobble from at least one of the children. Yeah. And then when I come back, they're really happy for a period and then there's another wobble when we have to try and adjust for that. Yeah. But before I would have just not thought about it. Now I think a lot about it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about what notes do I leave them in the house. I was even thinking last night, should I record some videos for me when I'm going to be away on my next trip so that she can play them? But we have to lean on a lot of friends to enable everything to happen.
Yeah.
The boys are both in football, trying to get them to 2 football matches and training. And our eldest plays rugby and trying to get him to rugby matches and dance classes and swimming lessons and music lessons. All of that happens whether I'm there or not.
Yeah.
So it's quite complex.
It's an expensive. It's a busy job, isn't it? Being a parent. So kind of stepping away from work a little bit then.
Yep.
So you do some great work. It sounds fantastic. I think it's really inspiring. Away from work, downtime. One, do you ever get any downtime? And secondly, if you were to put everything else to one side, what are your own hobbies? What are your own personal interests?
It's really interesting. When you've got a lot of time, you've got the ability to indulge in things. So if you're someone who loves watching Netflix, I'm sure you binge on Netflix quite easily. And it's quite easy if you've got a lot of time to fill it with stuff. I think now when I'm home, I do like kind of just having a night in. And that might sound really soft to be able to say, but like the thought of not having to go somewhere and speak somewhere, the thought of not traveling and having to travel back, is a huge weight off. So, if I do get time, I do like to read. When I'm traveling, that's a benefit at times, but also, it can sometimes lead me to not finishing books when I want to. I can have 5-6 books on the go at any one time and feel that, wow, they're all calling me and they all want to be read. But outside of that, love the cinema, love hanging out, going for food. I would have been a lot more into sport probably 10 years ago. And I'm trying to get fit at the moment, but in reality, I don't have the time for the gym.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, if I had a gym membership, I'd have been one of those people who goes, I've got a gym membership, but I don't really use it.
Do you think you'd be one of those that you think, right, I'm joining, I've bought the membership, and then, it's expensive and I don't actually go anymore. So let's just wrap it up. I mean, that's where most people are at. Yeah.
Most people kind of go, I have a dream that I want to have a body that looks like this by the time I go on my holidays.
Yeah.
But in reality, I'm quite happy to sit and eat comfort food and watch movies in the evening. So, just a challenge that we always have at home is trying to fit everything in. And I've got a few guys that I would hang out with on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah.
But, even going and playing squash and things there, I'd like to do more of it, but I just don't have the time.
Going back to this idea of business, because like I say, it's a business and lifestyle podcast.
Yeah.
But I know that you've had businesses of your own as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about a business that I know about, because I've spoken to you behind the scenes, but tell us about a business that you've been involved in.
So I've had various businesses I have been involved in and other businesses I've been able to help.
Yeah.
I think one of my skills is strategy. So I tend to come alongside people who are business owners and try and help them.
Yeah.
But specifically, I met a chap when I was working in the bank who owned 1,000 properties in Leeds. And when I met him, he said to me, you could do this. And I said, well, I've got no money. Well, what do I do? And he said to me, well, and drew me, a picture on a piece of paper and said, fundamentally, you don't need money. The banks will lend you the majority of the money that you need. So I drew it together, and I actually found a friend who wanted to do it too. We went into it together. That was helpful. And also problematic. So we went into a situation where our first property, we got 100% mortgage, and I lived in it, and we could rent some rooms, and that was all good.
Yeah.
And then we went for a second property, which was everything needing doing to it. I mean, ripping everything off the walls, putting a new roof on, getting a new kitchen in, the type of place that you go into and the kitchen has 10 layers of lino one on top of the other because an elderly person has lived there and then died.
Yeah.
And no one has given any care to the building. So we did some development work on that, and we moved through and we were able to re-gear the properties. So I think at the moment we've got 7 properties that we rent out.
Okay.
And we do that ourselves.
Yeah.
I've had some amazingly great individuals who've lived in those properties.
I feel like you're going to counter that with a, but we've also had.
Yeah, we've had moments.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who goes into business there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows.
Yeah.
I think nobody tells you how low things can actually get.
Yeah.
And I'm a risk taker. I'm someone who's quite willing to push the boundaries at times. I think in our worst position when we were starting out, we had £160,000 on credit cards and loans outside of mortgages, trying to make it happen, juggling everything that we possibly could. The pressure that was on each of us to try and make every month work to get the money in, and to do all the jobs that need doing around properties, was quite complex. We initially started renting properties and we rent them by the room. So high multiple occupancy, which requires additional checks and balances now on properties. But at that time, it was just, okay, we can make as much money as we possibly can, not appreciating how much hassle it would give. But there've been people who have absolutely nearly broken me along the journey. And I think in one case, I was in Cambodia last year and I've got a really important trip. I've got some really key individuals who are coming with us, and I'm showing us the program there. We've got many different centers that are working out there, and I have to give it my entire focus. I've got 15 people. I'm taking a group to show them everything, and they're all come over from the US.
Yeah.
We're going through the briefing, and I get a call from someone I know to tell me that, because they live 4 doors down from one of the houses, to tell me the police have just raided your house and someone's been growing cannabis in it.
Right.
And it's I've been renting the houses through an agency.
Yeah.
They've been doing all the checks and all that. And I thought I was one step removed from the problems.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're in Cambodia and the police are saying, we need someone to come down and secure the property. We need to make sure the electric's turned off and all of those things. And it's taken a year to get that house right, because they'd bored through all the chimney breasts, they'd bypassed the electricity, they'd dug up floors. We took 3 skips of soil out of the property. I can't tell you the hassle. So I came back from Cambodia and took 3 days off work. And those 3 days I just spent trying to help clear the property of just rubbish.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find that there are individuals who are quite willing to abuse your generosity.
Yeah.
I can probably tell you I've been given every excuse in the book as to why people can't pay the rent.
Yeah.
And initially I would have allowed people to, that's fine, you can pay me back, you can pay me back, you can pay me back. But people who find someone weak who's a landlord, they just abuse them. And the early days I would have been quite willing to carry, people owe me 2-3 months rent. Now where I sit at the moment is someone's a day late, I'm on them. Yeah. Because I realize if I'm not on them, it'll be 2 months late, 3 months late. Yeah. It'll be my kids who are going starving because someone's not paying it. And you realize, there's just so many things that people can do. Mm. I had one person in the early days that went to move into a property, never moved away from home, decided they were going to try and cook pasta and didn't realize that you're meant to put water into pasta. Nearly burnt the kitchen down. Nice. Yeah. It's just, you realize everybody's coming from a different background, a different place. I don't mind it when people are open and honest. I can take people open and honest saying, I need help. Something's happened. I'm going to be a couple of days late or whatever. But you quite quickly, you realize, no, there's a lot of people out there who don't have the same morals or ethics that you have. Yeah. And you then have to operate. If you're going to operate in this business, you're going to have to do it effectively. Yeah.
I think it's quite difficult because if you're friendly with people, it's not mates rates, but you're friendly. So you try and you try and do things quickly, smoothly, based on a handshake. But it's still a business, isn't it? So you've got a difficulty where, maybe a person who needs a property to live in and they say, yeah, I'll pay you the rent. But then they've also got that thing of, well, you're my friend, so, can I pay you a little bit later? That's how do you it's difficult stuff, isn't it?
I don't rent to friends.
Yeah.
I just don't. Yeah. And I'm so reluctant to rent to anyone I know.
Yeah.
I've had really great experiences. I've had really bad experiences.
Yeah.
But the experiences I've had the worst are people that I know. For that exact reason, that they just feel that they can. And also there's an expectation that you're going to keep the houses to hotel standard.
Yeah.
I get texts often from new people moving to properties asking for the moon on a stick.
Yeah.
So what I now do is I tell people up front, this is how the house is going to be. And here's the contract and you're signing into this, and let me go through all of your obligations and I'll go through all of mine.
Yeah.
But please note, I'm not going to be stupid at this. You know, I'm going to try and do the best I can for what I've got. But we've been able to re-gear those properties. That's enabled us to buy a plot of land and build our own house.
Yeah.
You know, there's things that the properties have enabled us to do.
Yeah.
I just would be reticent if I was anyone who just thinks, yes, I'm going to go into property development and I'm going to make a lot of money, because the reality is, for everyone who does make a lot of money, there's a lot of people who have lost a lot of money.
A lot of money as well, yeah.
And I would say, certainly for our perspective, you either go into rentals on the basis that you're going to make an amount of money per month on the rental yield, or you're going into it because you're going for capital appreciation. If you are, you need to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
But I think from where we are at the moment now, I've realized my life is too busy, and I'm probably going to divest myself of some of those assets going forward. Okay.
You don't want to keep, you don't see those as long-term.
I'd love to.
Taking them into your retirement or anything.
I'd love to, but the reality is you have to make a decision based on where you are now.
Yeah.
Based on where the economy is up to. And I was with a business guy very recently, very successful, made billions of pounds. And their comments to me recently were, actually, we're going into winter.
Yeah.
In economic terms. Therefore, he's sold off 2/3 of all his businesses.
Okay.
Because the reality of it is, going into winter, you need to have some stores to be able to get you through. And I think I wouldn't have known all of that in the past. And I certainly want to be in a position of economic strength going forward.
Yeah.
4 kids in my 40s the reality is, time is precious, money is precious, and everything is kind of under stretch. And certainly when you're trying to do anything in business, I think there's an expectation that someone else can do this for you. But the reality is, it's on you, and you've got to come up with solutions. In the same way as when we started out the charity, it's like you don't grow a charity without working really, really hard to make it happen.
Yeah.
Loads of events, going to meet people,
and
constantly trying to keep a positive attitude. I think it was said that negativity positivity in a negative situation isn't naive, it's leadership.
Okay.
And as business people, you've got to lead family, you've got to lead staff, you've got to lead yourself through circumstances, and keeping a positive attitude when when you find out that your home's just someone's been growing cannabis in it, and you've had an agent that you supposedly taking care of that property. It can hurt.
It can hurt, definitely. Let's go a little bit lighthearted.
Yeah.
We're going to play a game.
No props.
I play this game with everyone who comes on the podcast. So he's smiling now because it's a bit lighthearted.
Yeah.
The game is called This or That. I've called it This or That. It's more or less a case of, would you rather? Would you rather do this or would you rather do that? The thing with this game is that you have to choose one option. You can't say, no, I don't want any of those. You have to go for one. Okay?
Awesome.
We will have some game show style music that kicks in. Okay, so I'm going to ask you 10 questions.
Yep.
You've got 2 choices with each question. So here we go with this or that. Here we go. Tim Nelson, nice and easy to start with. BMW or Mercedes?
Mercedes every time.
Why?
BMWs are absolutely rubbish in the winter.
Oh, really?
I've had loads of people who've owned them and then find themselves slipping around when the snow comes.
Okay, so you're thinking practically, aren't you?
I'm thinking if I'm going to drive it, I'm not going to have it in the garage.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, next question: Niagara Falls or the Great Barrier Reef?
Great Barrier Reef. I've been to both, and the Great Barrier Reef is by far the most impressive thing that I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
One of my favourite places, I had the opportunity to go to the Whitsunday Islands and to an island called South Mole, and I've only been once, but it's stayed with me since then.
Okay. Wow. I'd love to go one time. I'd love to.
You should do that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put it on the bucket list. James Bond or Jason Bourne?
James Bond every time.
Why?
Because Jason Bourne was just the American version of trying to come up with James Bond. They realized they didn't have a superhero who was a effective individual who could find people. It conjures up MI5, MI6. Every boy when they grow up wants to be that that kind of undercover individual who rescues. That's why people so much love it.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel Jason Bourne, there's been too many things that you go, no, you've been punched in the face too many times.
And it hurts.
And there's no way you would react that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Next one, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. I just think now Disney's got it, it's going to go to another level.
Okay.
And, some people have talked about Lucas and passing it on to Disney, but I think Disney have not done anything really badly. They've tended to invest heavily and take the franchise on further. Star Trek for me, it seems it's not me.
That was a real business answer, that. That was a real business answer. I like that. Next question. 8 hours sleep or a cat nap? Or several cat naps during the day?
I couldn't do 8 hours sleep. I'm not an 8 hours sleep kind of guy, just in general. I occasionally would take a cat nap if I've got the opportunity to it. Like 10 minutes and gives you a boost. So like last week when I was coming back from Brighton, as I said, I'm shattered. I'm getting home after work, but if I do 10 minutes, I'll be good till bedtime.
Okay, cool. Chinese takeaway or Indian takeaway?
I know this might sound really silly, but I've had a good group of friends that always do a Chindian.
Right.
Which is Chinese starters, Indian main course.
Right.
I would prefer Indian myself in terms of food.
Okay.
Mainly because I prefer the options that you've got with Indian food.
Nice. Apple or Android?
I go Apple. Simplicity, usability. They are more expensive. So if you're only doing it value for money, like if I was employing people and giving them laptops, they're getting, and they're going to get like a Dell laptop. They're not getting an Apple one. Yeah. Apple's just for posh people.
See, I'm an Android person, you see, so...
He says with an Apple.
Well, I have a Mac, but I think in terms of phones, like, I'm a Samsung person, but...
You get used to it, though, don't you? You build, you know where everything is, it's so simple, and it's the moving from one to another. That's the face. I originally started on Nokia, moved on to Sony Ericsson, and then moved from Sony Ericsson to Apple, and we moved out. Yeah.
Were you part of the BlackBerry phase as well?
I had that when I worked in the bank. I had a BlackBerry as well. It was good, but like anything, when you're having to do something for work, it can be a bit frustrating.
Exactly.
People getting you any time of the day.
Cool. Just a few quick ones, okay? I think these are obvious, but I'm just going to test you anyway. Taking part in Tough Mudder or taking your wife, Sasha, out for the most expensive meal that you can find?
I know this might sound really silly, but my wife would not be into a really expensive meal.
It has to be an expensive meal, Tim.
I know that, so that's why I'm saying my wife would not be into an expensive meal. In fact, I took her to an expensive meal in London last year, and she was like, I'm just not feeling it.
Okay.
So I'd definitely do Tough Mudder.
Okay, Tough Mudder, okay. Fantastic. So kind of just coming towards the back end. So we are recording this just before you go off to Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
Apprehensive, daunted. I know I'm not fit enough. I've spoken to so many people who have done it, attempted it. Some have found it easy, some have found it really difficult. I've got 22 individuals that I'm part of a team of, and I'm leading the team. And it's all to try and raise money for Hope for Justice. It's been going well in terms of fundraising. I think I've personally, at the end of next week, I should have got to 43,000 pounds I've raised. So
fantastic. I'm
really pleased. Loads of businesses got involved. It's been really, really good. But the reality of it, when I'm only a few days away from doing it, is more daunting than I had thought. And certainly, we were on our last call with the company that we're using to assist us on the climb, and we're starting in the rainforest. It's 28, 29 degrees, and then we will finish at minus 20 degrees. And you have to get up at 12 o'clock at night to walk through the middle of the night, because if you don't, the ground is frozen and you can walk on it. When it gets to midday, the ground's not frozen and you can't then climb on it. So there's bits of pressure. I don't know if it can do it because of altitude. For anybody who's done altitude climbing, you just don't know how your body's going to respond. So I think there's a little of the unknown in it. I'd like to do it though. I'd like to be on the top and have my photograph taken, and be one of those things that I could put down as a big tick of I've been able to achieve this. But I think we did it to raise funds, and we have raised funds, and it's really good. I've got people coming from all over the world to join me. Loads of people I don't know, so I'll get to meet loads of great people. Yeah. But I think the reality for me is anytime you go to do something like this, where it's a big, highly visible thing, it's on lots of people's bucket list that they want to do. There's a reason why lots of people haven't done it. Because it's not easy. It's been expensive to put together. I'm still finding myself all these bits that I need to go and get. And I have conversations with somebody who's done it before, and they go, did you know that you need, like, for instance, I had this conversation last week. Tanzania have banned plastic bags.
Right.
So you can't bring anything in plastic bags.
Okay.
So you can have Ziploc bags, but you cannot have plastic bags. So any time, if you thought, hey, if I've got a wet coat, I'm going to put it in a plastic, no.
So how do you carry things?
You have to have non-plastic bags.
Fair enough.
But it's stuff like that you suddenly find yourself going, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that if I'm bringing a bag of sweets, do I have to take them out of the bag or not?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So.
Fantastic. All right. So how long are you going for?
It's a 7-day hike. We leave, we're away for 11 days.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And like you say, I think it's one of those things that you can say, I've done this, I've achieved this, and it's going to be fantastic. Do you think it might be the one time that you go to Kilimanjaro and think, I've done that now, I don't need to go back and do it again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we started this thing called Extreme Challenge last year, and Ben took a team to cycle from Phnom Penh to Ho Chi Minh with a view to launching our Vietnamese office. And really that was child's play in comparison to this. Yeah. But we'd like to do something every year. Yeah. So if I don't know if I will be able to do it next year. Hopefully one of the other team members will take it on, but certainly I would want to attempt something different.
Fantastic.
I'm not don't think I'm doing Everest or Mont Blanc or something like that where people die on a regular basis. Yeah. I'll probably keep to the lesser grades. Yeah,
I'll stick to the stairs at the minute. I think I'll stick with that. Yeah. So that's wonderful, Tim. Just in closing, can you share? How can people get in touch with you or find out more about the work that you do? Can you share any social media links or websites?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we've got the Hope for Justice website, which is hopeforjustice.org. Someone wants to, I can give out my email. I don't mind. So if someone wants to email me, just tim@hopeforjustice.org. You can find me on Instagram on Tim Nelson UK. You could LinkedIn me. I'm not one of these people who wants to create barriers between me and connecting. Yeah. And if there's a way in which I can help someone, I'll definitely try.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tim. I mean, we'll put all of those links underneath the video as well, and we'll put them out on the various platforms. But yeah, Tim, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for coming in. No problem. Love to have you back again. Talk about what's changed, any of the future projects you've got going on, how life is. Let's talk about our wives, whatever. Definitely. But yeah, it's been great to have you here. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, you've made it this far, you've stuck it out to the very end, so thank you for watching this episode of So This Works. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, please leave a comment, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, please tell a friend about it, please share this video, and also hit that notification bell so that you're notified as soon as a new video has been released. If you'd like more information about this podcast, please check out the website sothisworks.co.uk. I hope that you will join me for a future episode, and until next time, take care of yourselves.